Hello and welcome. My name is Sydney Rebecca.
And I am Rebecca Snow.
And we are the Becks.
Yay.
Today's topic is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Alright, so just a couple things. When Mary Shelley was 19, that's when she actually published Frankenstein, which I think is super impressive.
Kind of crazy. She was just a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, just a young girl.
And she did it anonymously, because
well, if they'd have known a woman had written the book,
nobody would have paid any attention to it.
Not in those times, anyways.
But I thought what was cool was that it was the product of a kind of challenge between friends. It was her and Lord Byron and her husband Percy and a couple of other people. They were all in Geneva, Switzerland, and they decided to do a horror story contest just among themselves. And not only was Frankenstein produced from it, but so was The Vampire. Now, unlike Frankenstein, which was a full-length novel, I think it got published in 3 parts. The Vampire just stayed a short story. It was by John William Polidori. So yeah, it was Lord Byron, Polidori, Mary Shelley, and Percy Shelley that did this contest. Frankenstein, the Vampire. So the Vampire is often viewed as the progenitor of the romantic vampire genre of fantasy fiction. Interesting. We'll probably talk about that one a little later when we cover sexy vampires, because that will be a topic later on. But for now, we're talking about Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. So we did it 2 ways. I read the book Frankenstein, and Becky...
I watched the movie, the 1994 version, I believe. Hold on, I can tell you. I had it written down.
I was going to say, didn't you take notes this time?
Oh, I'm good at taking notes, but not that good. But yes, I watched the movie. The one I chose was supposedly as close to the adaptation of the book as any have been of Frankenstein. So I didn't watch the one, where he's walking around like the 1930s version where he's like, oh, things like that.
Boris Karloff.
Yeah. So I wanted something that was closer to the book, more of what Mary Shelley's story was rather than... I believe it was the 1994 version. It was. And it was interesting. Not really sure how I feel about how it was filmed and things. It was hard to follow at times, the way they were following the story and skipping around through things. And it just was a little hard to follow, but it was enjoyable.
So did they do Victor on the boat in the Arctic?
Yes,
okay.
That's how it opens
So
up.
it does start with Walton, sorry, my bad, finding Victor, and then Victor relates to him.
The story.
Yeah. Now, does it go from Walton to Victor to the monster, back to Victor, back to Walton again?
Well...
Because that's how it is in the book.
Kind of. Opening scene is Walton, and they find Victor, then... The monster, the creature, I don't really know if I should call him a monster. The creature appears, and then it shows the whole story. Then it goes back to the ship and Victor talking about why he was there and what was happening. And then it ends with Victor and Walton. And yeah, so it's kind of just...
Okay. It skips around
it does follow the same time. I guess I would say I haven't read the book, so I don't know that it follows the same timeline, but... Yeah.
That's the basics of it. Starts with Walton, goes to Victor, goes to the creature, back to Victor, back to Walton again. So a couple things. I am curious as to see whether the movie, because I did not watch the movie. So in your opinion, is Victor Frankenstein a empathetic or pitiable character? Is he portrayed as a victim?
No.
Or is he the villain?
No, he's the villain.
Okay, for sure.
I mean, the creature becomes villain-like, but only due to his circumstance. Gotcha. But Victor is the one who selfishly creates the whole thing. It's his fault. It's his obsession. It's his wanting to prove who he is and how wonderful he is. And yeah, he is definitely the real monster in this, at least in the movie, what I see. He is just a selfish, self-centered man who was out to create fame for himself. And it starts out that maybe you could feel bad for him because the reason he goes into doing the experiments to try and stop death was because he lost his mother and was heartbroken over that and felt that no one should ever have to feel that pain. So at first you think, okay, he's just really just trying to stop death, that no one should, and that's what he says, no one should have to die. And
that's a departure from the book.
Is it? Mm-hmm. Yep. No, his mom
does die.
Okay. His mom dies from childbirth in the movie.
Sick.
She is pregnant, which he is a grown man, obviously. She is pregnant, and she collapses and goes into labor early, and the baby was in the wrong position, and she basically bleeds out. And he was completely heartbroken.
Yeah.
And said that he was going to prevent death.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when he started experimenting with electricity and what he could do. And then it became an absolute obsession for him. And nobody and nothing else mattered but that obsession. So
with Frankenstein, we all kind of think of the Boris Karloff or like the cartoony Frankenstein with the bolts and the electricity and the it's alive.
Yeah.
All that. So did they kind of reveal how he brings the creature to life?
100%.
Okay.
Reveal.
That is also a departure from the book.
Really?
Because it is such a, I guess, grotesque secret that Victor really thinks destroyed his life. He doesn't impart upon that knowledge anywhere in the book.
Oh.
Not when he's actually talking about his time at the college and doing the experiments. And
they actually show the experiments. They show him experimenting on frogs to begin with. They show him breaking into cemeteries and stealing bodies.
Oh, God.
And he actually states that, I actually wrote this down in my notes because I thought, this is where I think he becomes the monster. He becomes the villain.
Do tell.
He states, as he's like breaking into the cemetery, he says, they're just raw materials. That's what they are. They're meant to be reused. It was like he was trying to convince himself that it was okay. So he was taking different parts.
Nobody's using them. Like, might as well.
Yeah. In the movie, I don't know in the book, but in the movie, he had like a professor that he really looked up to, and that's who he turned to, who was already doing the different experiments.
Okay.
And not quite what he was interested in, but he got with him, started doing the experiments, and then he was actually killed. And he uses his brain.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, so what he was doing was actually collecting the best parts, I'm air quoting here, the best parts of different corpses to use to build the creature. And he actually starts with a frog, and he uses amniotic fluid from babies. Amniotic fluid.
Where does he get that?
Oh, they show him going to like a woman giving birth, and her water breaks, and they're collecting it for him. He has people collecting it for him. Yeah. Oh, so he uses this amniotic fluid, and he actually has certain body points of the body, where he injects needles with tubes, and he fills those certain spots with the amniotic fluid, and then releases electric eels into the tub that he has the body and the creature in. And so the mix between the amniotic fluid and the electricity reanimate. And he does it with a frog, and it works. So then he decides it's time to do it with the creature that he's built out of, the parts.
Man, he doesn't even work up to humans. He's just like, well, it worked on a frog.
Yeah.
Time to go.
And then he immediately regrets it when the creature comes to life. Immediately. The scene is absolutely, I can't even explain it. So the creature falls out of this big, like, copper tub that has all the things that go into it with the electricity and the eels and the tubes. And it, like, falls over, and the creature is alive. And he actually says, he lives, very dramatically. Which I know is not in the book because I've read multiple excerpts where it says this did not happen.
No, yeah, he never said anything.
Yeah.
He basically fainted like a bitch.
So he tries to get the creature up, and they keep sliding around in this amniotic fluid. Like, it goes on for 5 minutes. It's absolutely ridiculous. They're sliding and falling and sliding and falling. And then he gets him up, and he, like, hooks his arms through chains and then hauls him up to the ceiling and, like, just leaves him there.
That's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
Well, that brings to mind multiple points, though, where it's, he literally fails to take responsibility at every step of his life. Like, once he leaves his parents, it's like, well, it's not his fault that any of this happened.
Yeah.
And that's a common theme throughout the book. With every step of tragedy that happens, it's not Victor's fault. He's the victim.
Yeah. It's how he was with Elizabeth.
Uh-huh.
He was very much that way with her. She was very upset because he, like, just quit communicating with her when he was at college and doing these experiments. And she actually went to him during the cholera outbreak and risked her own life. And he basically told her to just get out and go away. But it wasn't his fault. He had to do this. This is what he had to do.
He's obsessed with, like, obtaining his own fame or,
yes.
like,
that's what I got.
Prestige or, whatever it is. He doesn't for a second consider the fact that he's actually making life.
Exactly.
Like, he's trying to make something anew.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a means to an end to him. He doesn't want to create life to create life, like he says. There's not some altruistic motive, really. He can say that it was for my mother. But again, I feel like that's passing off.
And maybe in the beginning where he thought, if I can stop death, this is something that, would help everybody. But that's not what it turned into. It became that obsession where it was, I have to prove this. I have to be the one to do this. It's all about me.
Mm-hmm.
And no one else mattered. His friends didn't matter. The love of his life didn't matter. His father didn't matter. His little brother, because the baby lived when his mom died. He had a little brother. Mm-hmm. He didn't matter either. Nobody mattered. The only one that mattered was Victor. And as soon as he created the creature in the movie, he immediately regretted it. Mm-hmm. Took his journal and said that it needed to be burned and stuck it in the pocket of his trench coat. And actually the creature ends up with it. And that's how he figures out who created him and why.
It's a little convoluted.
Yeah.
Well, that's Hollywood for you.
True.
Like, it was this note. Like,
yeah.
Okay. So, I guess I want to say, like, the book is, I wouldn't say a very challenging read in that, like, it's Old English or anything like that. It's just very verbose. And at the time, and I'm not sure if it was the Gothic writing, Gothic is in, like, the genre, or if it was the Romanticism era or whatever, but they make a huge emphasis on the love of nature and the restorative properties that it has. Like, there are several times, and Mary Shelley, she creates a lot of parallels between Victor and the monster, especially when it comes to mood swings and stuff like that. Like, Victor is he's like super bipolar. Like, he has a very obsessive personality, which we know because of how much he threw himself into his work, how he ignored his family, and all that stuff. The creature is kind of the same way. He kind of has the same obsessive tendencies, but he's also very tender-hearted and appreciative of beautiful things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in such a way that he realizes that the creature realizes that he is in some way hideous and deformed. And that's not just through comparison, like, he looks at things of nature, beautiful skies, the soft summer breezes, all that stuff. But it's also because he sees what humans are supposed to look like, and he feels things, and he thinks things. And he has the ability to learn how to communicate and how to feel and all these things that, like, kind of what makes us human, right? But then he gets rejected. He gets rejected at every turn. And the first rejection that he gets is from his creator.
Yeah. Because,
like, Victor is responsible for making the creature, bringing him to life. But when he doesn't like the result, he turns away from it. He hates it. He regrets it. Like, he hates it. He despises the creature. As soon as it's animated.
Exactly. And that's the way it was in the movie, too. As soon as he realized what he had done, he was over it. He wanted nothing to do with the creature. He wanted nothing more at all. Like, he wanted to run away and pretend like he never did it and was going to destroy his work so no one would ever know.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it was like that in the movie. Or in the book, excuse me. This man, he got sick because of how upset he was about stuff. Like, he literally got, like, delirious and feverish. And, like, did that happen in the movie at all?
No, but he almost seemed manic.
Okay.
At times. Like, he was just,
They didn't go so hard into it, I guess.
Yeah, and there were just, like I said, the whole scene with the amniotic fluid, and some things were just kind of ridiculous. It was like, are you kidding me right now? What is happening? Okay. But yeah, he didn't get like that. He didn't make himself ill, but he was almost manic at times about things.
It's so interesting to me that the movie went out of its way to kind of explain the horrors of experimentation when Mary Shelley didn't. She didn't allude to anything. No dead animals, no grotesque gatherings. I mean, you can kind of glean that because where else is he getting stuff from, right? But it's not, there's no mention of electricity or anything like that when it comes to actually...
See, there was a lot of death in this movie. Of course, it was supposedly there was a cholera outbreak. Mm-hmm. So when Victor left the creature and actually the building was burning down and he ran out, he grabbed Victor's coat, which had, the journal in it. And when he was out and about, he actually jumped out of a building. He was running from the townspeople because they thought he had cholera because of the way he looked. Okay.
Oh, so interesting.
He was running, and he actually jumped off a building into a horse trailer full of dead bodies from the cholera.
Oh God, that's messed up.
Yeah, okay. And he ended up out in the woods and found a family, and he actually went and picked a whole crop of food for this family that didn't have anything. It was the neighbors.
Do you remember their names?
Oh, I do not. But it was a dad, a grandpa who was blind, a mom, dad, and 2 little children.
Oh, little children. Okay.
Yeah, they were young.
A slight departure from the book then. This is a blind old man and his 2 children.
Oh, okay. So the grandpa was the blind old man, and then they had 2.
Okay.
I think it was son-in-law and daughter. But he stayed in their shed and did things for them. And they knew he was doing these kind things.
But they didn't know who it was.
They didn't know who. And then the landlord came and threatened to kick them out and got very physically abusive with the grandfather. And the creature killed the landlord. And
valid.
100%. He was pushing him and hitting him, and the little girl was crying, and she actually ran and got her parents, and the old man had taken him into the house, and he's like, I can feel you with my hands, and he was feeling his face and asked him what happened to him. Well, the little girl had run to her parents and said, he hurt Grandpa.
Oh,
so they came running back and then saw him.
Classic misunderstanding trope.
And they started hitting him with sticks to get him out of the house because they thought the grandpa was being hurt. And that's when...
Well, what did Grandpa
He told them to stop, but they said we can't stay here because they knew that the landlord was dead. So they left. And he was devastated. He cried and he threw himself down, and he actually burned the cabin down. And then that's when he found the journal. And that's when he went looking for Victor.
Gotcha. So it's only a slight departure from the book, like I said. That was his first real lens into human kindness, because before then, he obviously was spurned by his creator. Anyone who saw him when he was running feared him and cursed him and
tried to hurt him.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So he finally is like, okay, so obviously, he's an intelligent being. He's like, it's my appearance. Something. I'm a monster.
Yeah.
I'm detestable. I'm a miserable wretch, all that stuff. So direct quotes, by the way. So he hides in his shed and he helps his family.
They had actually left for him at Christmas, like bread, I think it was, and a flower. And he had tucked the flower into the sleeve of his coat. So when they disappeared, he, after they had kind of attacked him because they didn't understand, he pulled the flower out and smelled it and started to cry.
Aww.
It was a very touching moment, but you could see something switch in him once he read that journal of Victor's and that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's depressing because especially when you get to the point of the book where it's really from the creature's point of view. He's capable of this complex thought. He watches his family for so long, he's able to learn the language. He even learns to write and read.
Yeah.
In the book, it's because it's kind of a convoluted thing. It's part of the book that I was like, this is too long-winded. I feel like it wasn't very necessary. It was basically a plot device to make sure that the creature knew how to read and write. But the son in the house of the family that he, stays in their shed, the woman he's courting is Arab, so she doesn't know the language.
Oh, see, they handled it differently in the movie.
Yeah. So he, like, while she was learning to read and write, you know, they were patiently teaching her to do it. He also was learning. He never interacted with any of the family until, you know, there wasn't a landlord or anything. He just, you know, the kids weren't at home, and he's like, this is finally my chance to make a friend. You know, the old man can't see.
Yeah.
You know, like, I can
so
speak.
So he can't judge him for
yeah,
his
I
looks.
I can speak their language. I can tell him, you know, my story. And the old man is really receptive to it. He doesn't, you know, the creature, and this is what really I like about, he never, when he, like, introduced himself to the old man, he was never like, hey, I'm the one who's been helping you with all the extra wood. I've been helping sow your crops. You know, I've been helping you do this and this and this. He never was like, I'm the one who's doing that. Yeah. Which would have been such an easy way in, I feel like, for the family.
No,
but it didn't occur to him to kind of leverage that. He just wanted to make a friend.
There was a lot of innocence in him.
Yeah. And that's what makes it even more heartbreaking.
Yeah. The first word he learned was friend.
Aww.
Because they came outside and saw that, and they're like, thank you, friend. And so he was like, friend. And so, but he learned to speak and read because the little girl, they were teaching her to read and write and speak, and so that's where he learned it.
Gotcha. Well, I feel like that makes more sense than just this random girl from Turkey being in part of this family for weird convoluted reasons. Like, it really doesn't matter. That's why I don't want to get into it. So basically he decides to finally, like, he's like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk to the old man. And he's like, you know, if you could see me, you would understand why everyone spurns me and I have no friends. I really just want to appreciate your kind words and your hospitality and all that. And the kids come home early and they see him and they freak the fuck out. And he's chased out of the house. And they move. Like, it freaks the kids out so bad that they're like, no, we have to get dad out of here. We can't live here anymore. There's a ghoul, you know? And it's like, you know, never for a second did it seem like the old man, I think it happened all too quick for the old man in the book to be like, hey, hang on, wait.
Yeah, that's what happened there too. They just rushed in and he was trying to stop them, but.
Yeah, I feel like it was a more believable excuse for them to leave in the movie than the book, because it seems weird to me. I guess I've never come across a man with ginormous proportions and terrifying features, so I can't really say how I would react. But, I don't know, it seemed kind of harsh.
No, I agree.
They could have, you know, and he was just talking to the old man. I think he was on his hands and knees, basically.
Yeah, he was in the movie. He was sitting next to the fire with him. The old man was feeling his face. And now, in the book, is this where he turned? Is this where, did he get angry? Did he do anything violent in the book?
So yes, when he first was chased out of the cabin, he like ripped trees apart and, you know, kicked mounds of dirt and threw rocks and, you know, all that stuff. He calmed down, went back, realized that they were leaving, and after they left, he decided to burn it down because he couldn't stand the memory of it.
Yeah.
And that was when it was a turn for him. That was when he decided that whoever had created him needed to take responsibility. He wanted, more than anything, a friend, a companion, someone who understood him.
Mm-hmm.
And time again, he tried to make connections, and he couldn't because of the nature of his existence.
Yeah. Even
though he could read and he could write and he could
was intelligent and he had feelings.
Yeah. And nothing he did worked out for him. Like, it's really very tragic. So this is where I'm like, I kind of wish, and this is, you know, it's been out for 250 years or whatever, 200, whatever. It's been out a long time, right? So I was asking James, I'm like, you know, James is my boyfriend. Like, you know, everyone kind of knows that, oh, if Frankenstein isn't the monster, but Frankenstein is the monster, you know?
Yeah.
Like, but I just wonder what it would be like to read Frankenstein without having any knowledge of the lore or the background of it at all.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like to read it for the first time? Was it obvious that Victor Frankenstein was a monster the whole time.
Yeah. Or did people empathize with him and feel for him because of whatever led him to do what he did?
See, it's like as time went on, the less I never really felt that sorry for him because he really is a victim of circumstances that he creates.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's all his own fault. I felt increasingly sorry for the people that were essentially friendly fire to everything that he did. You know, it was, I mean, really, first it was the creature.
Yes.
And then it was his family, his father specifically, and Elizabeth, and his friend Henry.
See, it was the first victim after the creature, obviously, was his little brother in the film. The
William?
creature actually came and killed his little brother.
Yeah, so was Justine in the movie?
Yes.
And she was framed for the murder?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to talk about this. Okay, so the creature kills William, Victor's little brother. That's his first crime, I would say. Because the reason why he even approached William, I don't know if they explain this in the movie, is because he's like, oh, a child. Like, a child doesn't know what a monster is necessarily. They have to be taught that. So perhaps if I approach a child and say that I'm nothing like a monster, like I'm just a being that wants companionship, maybe I can find a sympathetic person.
Yeah.
But it's William Frankenstein, and the creature grabs him and he's like, unhand me, beast, my father, Alphonse Frankenstein, will hear about this. And he recognizes the name. He's like, okay, this isn't Victor Frankenstein, but it's someone near and dear to Victor Frankenstein. Yeah. And he's kind of overcome by rage, and he does kill William. And he, sees a necklace on him, and he describes it as mischief in the book, which I found really funny. I know that word has probably changed meaning in the past 200 years, because it's not mischievous. I really did a Michigan word there. It's not mischievous to plant something on someone to frame them for murder.
Very true.
That's not mischievous.
No.
That's a straight up crime.
Yeah.
But I guess he doesn't know any better. I mean, he knew what he was doing. Yes. It's made clear. He's like, I think he was kind of sending a message to Victor more than anyone else.
He said in the movie, the whole time I was squeezing the life out of him, I saw your face.
Oof.
Yeah.
Big oof.
Yeah. So, and yes, then she was framed for the murder. But it doesn't say anything about the necklace in the movie.
Gotcha.
They just found her hiding, like she was the only one that didn't come home. She had been out in the woods looking for him and had become lost. So she hid in the cabin. So they figured that she was hiding, and that's why she must be the one that killed William.
Gotcha. So this is where it gets messed up, and this is when I really get pissed off at Victor. He gets a letter from home, and keep in mind, this whole time he's been sick because he's just overcome with the fact that he made a devil. Blah blah blah. He's a big whiny bitch. Mm-hmm. So he's so depressed, whatever. He's finally starting to get better because his friend Henry was like, let's give you some country air, let's see the mountains, let's tour England, let's, meet all your professors. I'm gonna be like, he had big ambitions to colonize India, which, yikes. But, he was very youthful and excited, and he did make Victor feel better for a time. Well, as soon as Victor was getting well enough to where he was able to go back home, because that was the goal, right? Henry wanted to bring him back into the fold, remind him that he had a family who loved him.
Yeah.
He had connections that he should be cherishing. He gets a letter from home from his father, Alphonse, that's saying that William had been murdered. And Victor immediately is like, the creature did it.
Yeah.
There's no reason, and I want to make this clear, besides his ghastly appearance, which Victor is himself guilty for creating, there's no reason for him to think at all that the creature is evil. Exactly. He just is so disgusted and self-loathing that I think he really projects onto the creature his worst qualities.
Yeah.
And he's like, this thing that I created killed my brother. And it's because he wanted revenge. So when he gets back and finds out that Justine is the one that was being framed for it, he's told that, William was strangled. Justine maintains her innocence. She was just looking for William. She has no idea how the necklace came to be in her possession. And Victor and Elizabeth believe her.
They believed her in the movie too.
And Elizabeth was very upset because she knew that Justine was innocent, but she couldn't prove it. Nobody could. Except Victor Frankenstein could have proved it.
Yeah.
He was so concerned with his academic reputation and his reputation in general that he was like, well, if I just tell them that I made a creature, they're going to think I'm mad. So I obviously can't tell them anything.
Yeah.
And the thing that pissed me off the most about it was like, okay, so he literally refused to provide evidence. He literally refused to save Justine's life. Mm-hmm. Full stop. Like, it makes me so angry. Because he's literally the only one who could have said something that could have freed Justine. And he maintains with his family, with Alphonse, his father, with Henry, his friend, with Elizabeth, his cousin/fiance, that he knows that Justine is innocent and he knows what really happened, but he won't tell them what it is. They think that he's like relapsing from when he was sick and delirious because of something that happened.
Yeah, see, in the movie, it happens so quick. Mm-hmm. Like, they find her the morning after they find William dead, and they immediately hang her. So there's nothing they can do. There's like the townspeople have gone crazy. They want her revenge for the child's death, so they like immediately hang her.
Yeah, no, it takes like at least like 5 days in the book.
Oh yeah, no, it's almost immediate.
And the whole time, Victor's just wrestling with himself because he just can't tell them because they'll think he's crazy.
Well, he was a monster.
Okay, so shortly after William dies, he goes out to the mountains. And again, this is him, like, it's the healing power of nature, okay? He's like, if I just go out to the mountains, I'll feel better. And I kind of love this about that because obviously Mary Shelley, she really enjoyed the Alps and everything when she visited them.
Yeah.
Just for this little writer's fringe retreat that she did, she wrote a whole book about it. Like, she literally was like, Geneva's beautiful. This is where I want this man to be from. I'm going to explore the rivers and the lakes and the mountains and everything and describe them in excruciating detail at times. But nature's healing, so that's why she did that, I guess. But on his walk, Victor is confronted by the creature. Mm-hmm. And the creature's like, Victor's freaking out. He's like, I should just murder you right now, you wretched, vile thing, you hideous devil, blah, blah, blah. And the creature's like, shut up. You're going to listen to my story. You owe me that much.
Yeah.
So that's when the creature relates everything that happened from the time that he was born, essentially, mm-hmm. to when he found himself looking for Victor to talk to him. And he very much, the creature, I should say, he very much doesn't understand his anger and is frightened by it. He doesn't like that he lashes out violently. He doesn't like that he's murdered people. He does want revenge against Victor.
Yes.
But it's not personal against the victims at all.
No. It's more directed all towards Victor.
Yeah, because he wants Victor to suffer as he has suffered.
Yes.
And it's ironic because Victor literally sacrificed time and energy and everything away from his family. He neglected them to make this creature. And then suddenly he cares about everyone very much.
Yeah. No.
Like,
agreed.
It just doesn't work, right? So the creature gets to the end of his tale and he's like, as my creator, it is your responsibility to make sure that I have certain comforts that are afforded to me as a creature that exists, that feels things. He says, you created me alone. It was the height of cruelty that no one in this world can understand me. So you need to make a creature just like me. And he wants it to be a woman.
Yes, he wants to have a companion
that
he can love.
And he's like, you do this for me, and you'll never see me again.
Yep.
I will never darken your doorstep. I won't hurt anyone else. You give me what is owed to me. And I can't really disagree with the creature on this. This was actually one of the more interesting parts of the books. You give me what is owed to me, and you'll never see me again. I'll never haunt you again. Everything will be fine. Everything will be as it was before. You can have your family. I have my companion and my family, and we can each move on from this whole horrible affair. And at first, Victor's like, okay, that actually sounds great. Like, I hate you so much, but I guess I am kind of responsible. He almost gets it. It's like the light bulb almost lights. It almost fires. And then he gets into the process of actually making the female creature. And I don't know if he gets, like, flashbacks from when he was doing it before. But he's like, I can't do this. I changed my mind. And right in front of the creature, he destroys the body of the female creature and tells him to go fuck himself, basically. And the creature's pissed.
Oh, see, that's not what happens in the movie.
So what happens?
See, in the movie, he confronts him. He tells him that he deserves a woman or someone like him that he can share his life with. And I do have this one line that I wrote down because it's not one line, but it's a part that he says to Victor. He says, I do know that with the sympathy of one living being, I would make peace with all. I have love in me the likes of you can scarcely imagine, and rage, the likes of which you would not believe. If I cannot satisfy one, I will indulge the other. And so Victor agrees to create a female creature for him. And he gets Justine, that was her name, correct? Mm-hmm. He gets her body. And that's what he's going to do.
That's fucking disrespectful. Oh my God. But wait.
So he decides not to do it in the end and runs off with Elizabeth to get married. She says, marry me tonight. Marry me. So they run off and they get married. And the creature follows them. Mm-hmm. And as they're in bed for their wedding night, they hear a sound. And he goes to the window to look and tells her to stay there. Well, it was already too late. The creature was in the room with them. And he rips out Elizabeth's heart.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And Victor loses it and grabs her. And he's screaming, no, 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 and gets on horseback and takes her back to the house where Justine's body was. And cuts her head off, Elizabeth's head, and places it on Justine's body. And reanimates her. And what? I don't know how it happens because, okay.
What?
He ripped her heart out. Her face was fine, but when he reanimates her, like, she has a big cut on her face and her eyes drooping and she's all messed up.
It's for the drama.
Yeah, her wrist is sewed up. I'm not really sure why. There was just a lot of, I'm like, that's not how she looked when he brought her in here. What is happening?
Yes,
I even said that to Roger, my boyfriend. I'm like, what is happening? So he gets her up and he keeps saying, say my name. Victor does. Say my name. Well, then the creature's like, she's beautiful. And he reaches out to her and she sees him and she starts walking towards the creature.
Uh-oh.
And then they start fighting over her. And she gets very, very angry and she screams and walks over, pours gasoline on herself and lights herself on fire. And that's how it ended. Well, that's not how it ends, but that's how she ends.
God.
That's how the whole female creature ends. That's how it's all... That's the end.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it was
that's
very
a departure.
macabre. It was like, oh, okay.
Well, there's really been a fascination with Bride of Frankenstein, which we're not going to get into. It is interesting that I wonder if that was I don't know when they actually released Bride of Frankenstein. That was a black and white movie too, wasn't it?
I believe so.
So there's always been kind of an idea of that. But again, in the book, he does not follow through with it. And he...
1935
instead
Bride of Frankenstein.
Okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm. So instead of Victor being like, there will be no consequences, because he really is like, the creature's pissed, right? He vows revenge. He says, I will be with you on your wedding night. That's what he says to Victor. And Victor's like, is he though? Like, the creature has literally
murdered
killed his
people.
Brother, framed Justine, and for some reason...
Did he kill the father, too, in the book?
No.
Oh, because he did kill Victor's father in the movie.
No, so what happens is, he's actually one of the last family members of Victor's to die. And it has nothing to do with the creature killing him. He goes back to Switzerland again. He goes back to Geneva, and his father's like, hey, like, I really think that it's time for you and Elizabeth to get married. I think it would really bring you joy. I'm getting older. Your mother wasn't here to make it, but it was always her wish that you two would get married. You seem like you're very dear friends. And Elizabeth is adopted.
Yes.
And
she was raised as his sister, basically.
Yeah,
but she was older. She was older. Yeah, they knew.
But they were always they always knew that they were going to be married eventually. Yeah. But they were very fond of each other. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth definitely more fond of Victor than Victor was of her, because I don't think Victor was capable of caring about anyone more than himself.
No, super selfish.
So they do get married within like 10 days, which is crazy to me, because I always thought that weddings took a long time to plan or whatever. I was like, 10 days, man, they really rushed it. Okay. So they take this beautiful trip down the river, across a lake. They get this room. They rent like a house. They get this room by the lake side, and they have their wedding night there. And all of a sudden, Victor's like super paranoid again. He's like, you'll be with me on my wedding night. He's like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Oh, I forgot to mention, he does kill Henry. The creature kills Henry before he ends up going back. Victor ends up going back to Switzerland. And he's very shocked by this for some reason. Mm-hmm. Again, like, the creature's like, I will literally dog your footsteps for the rest of your life. Like, you can't do me this one kindness. I'm going to make sure that you're miserable forever. So he kills Henry. And so the first loss that happens is his mother, obviously. She's sick. She doesn't die in childbirth. So she dies. And then the next death is William, and then Justine, Henry, Elizabeth, and then his father. So the creature does kill Elizabeth on their wedding night. And Victor's super shocked by this. Again, I don't understand why. I mean, it is horrible. I'm not going to say that it's not horrible, but, like, come on. And, he tries to get people to hunt the creature, but he can't convince anyone to do it. So he goes back home to tell his father that he's going to be leaving. He tells him about Elizabeth first, because, again, this was basically Alphonse's daughter.
Yeah. She called him father.
Yeah, and he was very, very old at this point anyways. And I think at that point, the loss was just too much. He died shortly after he learned of Elizabeth's death. He just couldn't take it anymore, which was also very, very sad. So as soon as he dies, Victor only has one brother who we never even really, hear from or have a conversation with or anything like that. He leaves that brother to take over the estate or whatever, and he starts to chase after the creature. And this is when it connects to Walton from the beginning. Walton is on an expedition to the Arctic in pursuit of greatness and infamy and all those good things, when he comes across Victor on an ice raft, starving and freezing. And Victor says that he sees the same manic obsession in Walton as he did in himself before he
does that in the movie as well.
So he tells Walton his story and warns him that he will become just like Victor if he continues on the path that he's making. Because the journey in the Arctic is very dangerous. They actually, they get stuck in between ice shelves and stuff like that. And the crew kind of mutinies a little bit against Walton because they want to go home. It's not safe anymore.
Yeah, it's the same way in the movie as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
Victor actually, I don't know, he dies on the ship with Walton. And Walton actually meets the creature.
Yes. Okay. Yes, that happens in the book,
and he asked him to come with them. When the ice started to shift and they were getting released out of it, he asked the creature to come with them.
Oh, really?
He did. But the creature actually stayed with Victor because they were sending him out to sea. They were going to burn him, burial at sea. And he said, no, I'm done with humans. And he actually burned himself alive, and he said he's my father. And that's how it ended, was Walton watching them burn together.
And that's terrible.
It was.
The book is pretty much just as depressing.
Yeah.
So Victor, he kind of is overcome by his illness and his fever, and, he was starving and cold and all that. He thinks that he has the strength to carry on trying to kill the creature, but he doesn't. One thing that Victor never did was acknowledge or take full responsibility of his role. Whereas the creature, the creature shows up almost as soon as Victor dies. Mm-hmm. And the creature, let me look over my notes here. Walton comes across the creature weeping over Victor's corpse, expressing remorse and self-loathing. He suggests, the creature that is, that he became more human than Victor himself. And he does, Walton doesn't invite him to go with them. He's very curious about the creature at this point. I don't think he fully bought into what Victor was telling him, even though they became very close friends from the time that they rescued him to the time that, he died. But he was curious about the creature, but he ultimately kind of let him mourn. Mm-hmm. And when the creature left, because they never did a burial at sea in the book, I don't know what they were planning to do with Victor's body.
Yeah.
Maybe send it back to Geneva. But he let the creature go. And the creature, when he left, he said that he was done with humanity and he was going to go and burn himself alive. He never said that Victor was his father or anything.
Yeah,
he did. He was always his creator. There was a lot of, I've never read Paradise Lost, but I guess there was a lot of reference to Paradise Lost in the book. Mm-hmm. And both Victor and the creature liken themselves to Adam / Satan multiple times. Okay. That was one of the parallels that Mary Shelley did. And ultimately, Victor was definitely Satan, and the creature was definitely Adam. But it was less kind. Interestingly enough, you can talk about how they, God first forsook Adam and Eve once they ate the fruit, but he accepted them for what they were at first. The creature never got that from his creator.
No acceptance from anyone.
It was always hatred. So
hatred and fear.
Yeah, ultimately, a very tragic story. The first science fiction novel ever to be published. There's some debate online between scholars and stuff, because for the longest time this was not considered a science fiction novel, but it has become known as one recently, and it's so influential. Think of how many different analyses it has been done on it, from a feminist viewpoint, from a romantic viewpoint, from a religious viewpoint. There's so many ways to analyze this text. There's been so many adaptations, movies, TV shows, even kind of spoofs, right? They do the Young Frankenstein that what's his face did.
Gene Wilder.
Well, yeah, Gene Wilder, but the director, I was trying to think of the director. It wasn't Mel Brooks, was it?
Let's look.
Which, it does make me kind of wonder if it is meant to be pronounced Frankenstein, but everyone just calls it Frankenstein. It's become Frankenstein, I feel like, at this point.
Yeah, it was Mel Brooks.
Okay, yeah. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. But yeah, it wasn't exactly what I expected. It was definitely more tragic than horrifying, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Victor...
I was really shocked because I'd never read the novel or anything, that the creature was feeling and smart and articulate once he learned to speak, and he had so many human qualities. And I think that just really shows a lot about humanity and how we treat people or things that are different. I grew up with that because my dad was a double amputee, and I can remember kids in school were terrified of my dad, and I would get so angry.
It's wild.
Because he wasn't a monster. He was a kind man who lost his limbs in an accident, you know? And I would get so mad at those kids, but they didn't understand. They didn't know, and they were afraid of what they didn't know. And we as humans tend to go that way rather than look inside someone and see who they really are. Their appearance is what scares us or makes us be standoffish.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, there's lots of messages to be gleaned from Frankenstein. The main one that people kind of talk about is playing God.
Yeah.
But I think it's more than that. I think it's the importance of familial connection and being accepted for who you are.
Exactly.
And the importance of connection, because really the creature really had nothing left.
Exactly.
He tried to make connections, but he was rejected at every turn, and he literally was miserable.
Yeah. So you have one person who pushed aside Victor. He pushed aside all of his human connections for his work, for what he wanted to accomplish, for, his fame. And you have the creature that he created that all he wanted was that human connection that Victor took advantage of and could have cared less about.
Yeah, it's like when the creature learns that he's marrying Elizabeth, he's like overcome with rage, because it's like the one thing that he asked for, and then Victor's immediately going to go and seek that for himself.
Exactly. Yes.
So we're going to wrap this up. We went a little long here.
There's a lot to cover in this one. But...
Yeah, no, Frankenstein's really good. I recommend you try to read the book. If you can't read the book, if you need a different avenue, there's lots of adaptations. There's lots of movie adaptations. Comedy, drama, like the old classics. I like the Frankenstein movies. I've liked every adaptation I've seen.
Me too.
So there's lots out there, and they all have different things to say. So I think there's still, just like the novel being influential like today, there's always more to be gleaned from it as humans. And sometimes looking into yourself can be the scariest thing you can do.
100%. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so my name is Sydney Rebecca.
And I am Rebecca Snow.
And we're the Becks.